Doing a video on upping compression on your 66 to 85 or 80cc motorised push bike engine or motorised push bike kit. Alright, to start with, when upping compression, you got to think the space between your piston that's coming out of your cylinder and what's going to come in contact with your head, the top part that you screw down on to your piston, under the top of your head that your piston makes contact with. You don't actually want it to make contact. As you can see with this head right here, the piston has made pretty severe contact with the head because someone has filed it down before me. This isn't my engine, this is an engine that I got off a friend, and it wouldn't run, and this is why. There's a tiny compression chamber that's nothing, but because it's hitting that head, that's why it wasn't running. Anyway, I'll teach you how to up compression anyway. To start with, we'll start with the head. As you can see, if I turn the camera on an angle, there's a tiniest lip up onto this little bridge here. That is the top bit that sits right flat up against here, the top of your cylinder. Now, if you file that little ring, because your gasket sits on that, sits flush on that, if you file that down, it usually sits up about probably 3 mil. If you file that down 1 mil, that should be good. I'll show you how to file it down. You get a piece of sandpaper. It's better to do this on glass or the flattest surface you can find, but because this is already destroyed, it doesn't matter. The rain's starting to belt down. Anyway, you get your cylinder, where that ring is, put it face down onto your sandpaper. Now you hold your sandpaper and all you got to do is just swivel your head on the sandpaper, just scratching small, very slight amounts of steel off that little edge. You just sand it down just enough. You look at it every couple of seconds, but the best way to do it is to tape your sandpaper to whatever surface you're using, and use 1200 grit sandpaper. So it's very fine, perfect for sanding it because you're not going to leave massive big grooves. It's not going to leak when you're riding. When you put it back together, it's not going to have any leaks, and it'll be right. So we'll go to the next thing, the piston. With the piston, it's pretty simple. Usually you have a sharp edge on the side of your piston. It's sometimes lean, but sometimes there's a bit of a sharp edge on it. If you take that little bit of a sharp edge off, not even a mil, I mean like 100,000ths of a mil, what happens is, as your piston comes down this cylinder here, you can see the grooves in the side of it, they all come up to that one there. That's your exhaust port. Now, your exhaust port is higher than these other 3 ports because the other 3 ports, one of them's your intake for your fuel, and the other one's pretty much your intake and your exhaust for the bottom of where your whatever you want to call it, I forgot the name of it. But the faster that split second as your piston's going up and down, the faster you want your piston to go up and down, if it releases its gas a split second into that exhaust port, a split second early, it can, and then if it hits, it'll be explained when I go into the head about how to file and port it. But yeah, what you do, all you got to do with the piston is get your 1200 grit sandpaper, and you sand the edges down very lightly, for probably about 10 seconds on each spot, just to take off the stuff that's on it, and take off a tiniest bit. Like, you should only notice tiny amounts of metal shavings on wherever you shaved it from, tiny amounts. And then that's all you got to do to that, and then your piston's fine. You've just upped your compression of your piston. Alright, now to your cylinder, and this is what's going to explain pretty much everything. Alright, we'll start with the fuel intake, which is that one right there. Alright, the fuel intake is on a lean, and that's for a reason. That's so fuel can get down to where your piston is faster. If you notice your piston doesn't actually go down far enough for your fuel to go onto your piston, it actually goes down into your engine. And the pressure from your piston coming down from that exhaust, there's pressure inside the piston is what pushes it down from the spark of it pushing upwards, holding pressure in this from here, up here. It pushes pressure to right here. This is where your head screws on. There's a combustion chamber right there. And that's where it makes the bang. The spark plug's right there. It sparks, makes a bang, mixes the fuel, makes a bang. It pushes the piston back down. Alright, it hits this exhaust port, lets the gas out, so there's no pressure in your piston. Now it's starting to push down, and it's just put fuel, as your piston's full, it's just put fuel in your intake, into your engine, into the bottom of your engine, and that fuel's waiting to go somewhere. These two ports on the side here is what delivers the fuel to your engine. As your piston goes back down, it forces pressure back down into the bottom of your casing, and forces fuel back up these little holes on the side here and here. Forces fuel back up them out these little holes here. So what you want to do here to smoothen fuel supply, smoothen exhaust flow, and it'll just run a lot better. Right, you take your sandpaper to stuff, go to the intake. This is pretty simple. You take your sandpaper and you just rub it. I'm not going to do it because this one's total. I'll just tell you what to do because it's pretty simple. You just scrape up the inside of where the fuel runs down with your 1200 grit sandpaper, just very lightly. You just scuff it up a little bit, because then it oxidizes the fuel. As the fuel runs down past it, scrambles the fuel particles that are running over it and oxidizes it, so when it's in the combustion chamber it can combust faster and shit. That's just the first one. Then you go to the exhaust port on the inside. We'll start with the intake for a second. On the inside of the intake, the best place to see this is there we go. On the inside of the intake, that little port, what you want to do is you want to file it out. You want to get your sandpaper and you want to rub the edge. The edge of it's square. If you notice, the ports are square edged. Now if you round all them edges off, make them nice round edges, don't dig out of it, just round off all them edges. It's going to help with, as your piston slides down, it can release and blah blah. It can release fuel. I can release air coming in and out of your chamber faster. And then at the bottom, you're going to do the same. At the bottom of the intake and the exhaust and of the side ports, you're going to do the same. You're going to round the bottom of it off so that smooth the fuel flow as it's coming into the engine. So then, fuel get in there faster, more efficiently, and faster RPM on your bike, faster rotation of the piston, and or overall smoother running of the bike. This one is totally destroyed, but anyway. Alright guys, hopefully that was important to you, useful to you. Enjoy till next time.